Alright, so this is my Mist Valley Ninja deck that I've been playing a lot this format, and I think I'm gonna take a break for it for a little while to play some more windups, and then when Shadows come out, I think I'm gonna go back to playing this because I think this should have a better matchup. But don't quote me on that because I'm not really too familiar with that deck yet. I'm gonna take a closer look at it when it's closer to being released. I usually don't like to think about the cards that are not TCG legal, at least not too much, just because, I mean, they're not in the card pool, so I don't have to worry about them yet. And the first thing you'll probably notice is that I almost completely dropped the Traptrix engine. It was just the worst part of the deck by far. The Mist Valley and Ninja parts were more cohesive and led to better plays. The Traptrix part of the deck was only tangentially related, and it gave free pluses, but it was inconsistent at times. Dionia was sometimes a dead card, and Traptrix Trap Hole Nightmare was definitely the worst trap that I ran. I think it's better off without it. And cutting most of that engine gave me a lot of room to add consistency cards, so I can make the deck more consistent now. And that's actually a big point. I can play 2 Rhoda now, and Rhoda is a huge factor in making this deck better, because now I have 5 copies of Hanzo, and you want to get to your Hanzo as fast as possible, so that starts all of your plays. And before I go card by card, I'd like to point out I'm not entirely sure about some of my card choices yet. Particularly, I'm not sure if I want to run 2 Sazank. I might just cut that back to 1. I had it at 1 before. I might cut the Mirmello. I just started testing card car, so I'm not sure if I like that or not. And then I'm also not entirely sure on my trap choices. The first card that I have is Apex Avian. He's the boss monster, and you can get to him really consistently with how often you can get to your Hanzos. You pretty much summon Apex Avian every game, and you summon him multiple times because you use Call of the Haunted and Soul Charge to bring him back from the grave, and you put him in the grave either by just letting him die, or more likely discarding him with Phoenix Wing Wind Blast. And Apex Avian, when he negates a card and bounces back to your hand, he's essentially providing you free discard fodder for Phoenix Wing Wind Blast. And Phoenix Wing Wind Blast, if you don't consider the discard cost, is one of the most powerful traps in the game. So that's one of the main things that this deck has going for it. You get free uses of Phoenix Wing Wind Blast. And Avian, whether you have Falcon out, or even just by itself, can shut down a lot of your opponent's plays and put you in a winning position. You're playing 3 Falcon. This is another critical card that you want to get to as fast as possible. If you get to Hanzo and Falcon in your game, just one of each copy, you're in a good position, and you'll be able to win a lot of games just by getting to those 2. Falcon allows you to reuse your trap cards by sending them back to your hand. Transformation, Vanities, Fiendish, and Call of the Haunted are all continuous traps that will sometimes just sit on the field, and then you can bounce them back to your hand with Falcon and then reuse them. Falcon also gives you free negates with Apex Avian. If you get both of them out together, then it's really hard for your opponent to force you to negate twice to actually get Avian off the field. Falcon is also a really big beater for being a level 4 monster, and it's really easy to send a card back to your hand to attack with him. If you need to, you can just set a card and then immediately bounce it back to your hand to attack. So it's a really good monster in this deck. Hanzo is your key guy who starts off your plays. Just by summoning him, you get to search a transformation, and then you use transformation to get usually Apex Avian. You can also summon Falcon, Mirmillo, or Zephyros. Also, sometimes you'll draw a transformation, and then when you search the other one out with Hanzo, you can use that as discard fodder for Phoenix Wing Wind Blast. You can special summon Hanzo a lot in this deck, like you can Apex Avian with your Call the Haunted and Soul Charge. And when you special summon him, you get to search for Sazanks. So that's more free advantage for you. Sazank is the best ninja besides Hanzo. Most of the ninjas are terrible, he's mostly in here because you can search him with Hanzo and Hanzo special summoned, so you get card advantage that way. And when you set him, he sends one of your opponent's monsters to the grave as a 1-for-1, so Sazank will pay for itself. It's also good at getting rid of problem cards like the hands, for example. Sazank sends to the grave instead of destroys, so you can get rid of trouble cards like that, or Stardust Dragon, or Beals, or whatever. It's a pretty good card in a hat format, which this is at the moment. Lots of the hat decks running around. You can use this to counter the hand monsters within that deck. It's also worth noting that you can use Sazank with transformation if you draw the two together and you don't have Hanzos. So you can use that to go into usually Mist Valley Falcon. You can't actually summon Apex Avian because Sazank is only a level 3, so that's unfortunate. I'm still running one Murmillo, with the only target being bottomless. The main reason I'm running Murmillo is because when Murmillo is special summoned, I can pop a spell or trap card. I'm not entirely sure whether I still like this choice, but that's actually saved me a few times using transformation to pull the Murmillo from my deck. And a lot of times when you draw him, you still won't have bottomless, so it's still good for searching that one bottomless. And then Zephyros is there to do similar things as Mist Valley Falcon. You can bounce back the face-up trap cards to reuse them, and then Zephyros then allows for rank 4 plays. This deck almost never makes rank 4 monsters. I'll make a rank 4 monster like once every 10 games. It just doesn't happen very often. Occasionally you'll need something. It's just not that important for the deck. Then I'm running one Cardcardie at the moment, with the idea that I want to get through my cards as fast as possible to get to my combos with Hanzo and Mist Valley Falcon in particular. The problem with Cardcardie is that you can't actually summon any other monsters the turn that you use it, and our plays in this deck start by normal summoning one of these two monsters. So Cardcardie allows you to get to those monsters if you don't have them yet. But if you do have them, Cardcardie isn't that good, really. Not being able to special summon the turn you activate this effect isn't too bad. The only thing you really will special summon during your turn is Soul Charge. I would run more monsters if you could run more than 3 copies of these guys, because they're so critical for how the deck functions. But there aren't any monsters that can replicate what they do, so I just run recursion cards to bring them back from the grave instead of running other monsters that aren't quite as good. And then I'm running 2 Rhoda. The only target is Hanzo, but that's okay. That's it for the monsters. It's a very small monster lineup. You're going to end up reusing a lot of these monsters. Rhoda will rarely be dead anyways, and this allows you to just get to your Hanzos as fast as possible, which is the card you want to have. And with 5 copies of the card, essentially, you can get it in your opening hand most games. And then I'm running 3 Duality, again for consistency, and usually you won't special summon in your own turn. You special summon mostly through transformation and Call of the Haunted. So Duality doesn't conflict with your own plays very much unless you happen to have it with Soul Charge. And Soul Charge is also a really good card in this deck, mainly because you can just pay 2,000 life points to bring back a Falcon and an Apex Avian. And then you're getting like 3+ cards for 1 card, essentially, because you can use each of them to negate. The more cards you can negate with these guys, the more card advantage you generate off of Soul Charge. And then I'm running 2 MST. Just sometimes you need to get rid of your opponent's floodgate cards. That's the main thing that you need MST for. It's not too difficult to play through back row. And then Murmillo can also double as a pseudo MST in a lot of situations. And then 1 Book of Moon, just one of the best staple traps. And then onto the actual trap cards. I've got 3 Transformation. You want to have as many as possible so you can get as much advantage as possible from your Hanzos. And even if you end up getting all 3 in one game, usually you will be able to use all of them. And then I'm running 2 Vanities, Emptiness. Vanity's Emptiness alongside Apex Avian can win you games by itself. It can be really hard for your opponent to get out of. If they have something that can destroy one of your cards, and therefore Vanity's Emptiness, you can negate it with Apex Avian. And if you have Apex Avian, Falcon, and Vanities out, you pretty much just win the game. And Vanity's Emptiness is really strong against a large number of decks. It's also worth noting that you can turn it off by bouncing it back to your hand with Falcon, and then you can special summon yourself, and you can just reactivate this whenever your opponent tries to special summon, as long as they're not using inherent special summons. And then I'm running 3 Fiendish Chain. Fiendish Chain is a lot better than Breakthrough Skill in this deck because it's a continuous card. In other decks, the fact that Fiendish can sit on the field is a downside. In this deck, that's actually a plus. And then Call of the Haunted goes along the same thinking there. It's a continuous trap card, so you can reuse it a lot. And it also brings back your Apex Avian for more negation of your opponent's cards. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll bring back a Hanzo with Call of the Haunted, and I get to search a Sazank, and then I'll use the Hanzo for a transformation, and then bring out an Apex Avian or Falcon, depending on if I already have the Apex Avian or not. This is a good play if you open with a Hanzo, transformation, and Call of the Haunted, which you do a decent number of times because you're playing maxed out copies of all of them. And then onto the regular traps, you want 1 Bottomless, 1 Warning, 1 Trenchel, the 3 best traps. Makes sense to run them. And then 1 Deep Prison. I was running 2 of this, but then I cut 1 for second Vanities. And I'm just kind of feeling out how the format is. I might want to run more of this. I might cut it entirely. So who can say? And then I'm running 3 Phoenix Wing Wind Blast. This is one of the most important cards in the deck. Being able to discard Apex Avian from your hand is really important because sometimes you need it to be in your grave to be able to summon it. And besides being essential to allowing the deck to run smoothly, it just is really good at disrupting my opponent's plays and can easily get extra deck monsters off the field. The side deck is pretty much the same from last format. It's a little bit different. I'm running 2 Black Horn of Heaven for decks like Geargia that special summon from the extra deck a lot. I'm running 1 Soul Drain and 1 Macro for decks that need the grave. Macro hurts my deck as well, so I would only use this against decks where it completely shut them down, and I would be careful not to use it in a way that hurts myself. I've actually lost the game before because my opponent used Macro Cosmos on me in game 1, and I was unable to get rid of it. So this is a card you have to be careful with. I'm playing 2 Full Houses in the 3rd MST, Spell Trap Destruction. Full House is really good in this deck because of the number of face-up traps that can just sit on your field. So this is an easy way to generate card advantage, and it's not too difficult to use this to destroy 4 of your opponent's cards, which I've done a few times with this. Now I'm citing 1 Simorg for when I'm going first against decks that set a lot, mainly Geargia and Hat. I don't like this nearly as much as Apex Avian, but against certain matchups it's really good not allowing them to set. 3 Maxi, staple against decks that special summon a lot. 1 Dark Hole, good monster removal. Sometimes you have Apex Avian out and this is dead, and this is just not good against certain matchups, but it's pretty good against others, so it's in the side. 2 Light Imprisoning Mirror, mostly for Boojins, and it also hits Lightsworns. And then the 2nd Deep Prison for decks that it's good against. It's just a solid trap card. And then in the extra deck, you just run all the rank 4s. They're all generic except for Key Beetle and Zeraphine. And you really don't use the extra deck much. Let's see. I'll go through and tell you which ones I've summoned at all. I've summoned this once. I summoned this once, but it was destroyed right away. I summoned this once when I had a torrential set. Yeah. This was when I summoned this, it was against Mermails, and I didn't want them to MST my Vanities. So I summoned this so I could force them to MST their own cards. I've summoned this a couple times. It's pretty good. I summoned this once to attack for game. I summoned this once when my opponent had Skill Drain. I've summoned this a couple times against Lightsworn, I think, and I think maybe Chaos Dragon, something like that. And I summoned this once to get over a Leo. And that's it. The other ones I don't think I've ever summoned. So yeah, you rarely use the extra deck. It's just in there because might as well. Sometimes you need it. So that was my deck profile, Mist Valley Ninjas. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to check out some of my other stuff. I'll then sit back with this.